Hello, everyone. Starbucks used to be a global icon, an unofficial embassy for American culture. But now, walk into a cafe in Italy, and that Americano you knew. It's called a Freedom Brew. In France, it's just black water. No joke. This isn't branding. It's backlash. Something deeper is brewing. The world isn't just rethinking U.S. products. It's rethinking everything America once symbolized: freedom, innovation, even quality. So, is this just petty symbolism? Or are we witnessing a global shift in how American goods and American influence are being quietly dismantled? A popular cafe chain in Milan stopped calling it an Americano. They renamed it Aqua Scura Black Water, not as a joke, but as a statement. It no longer sells to associate taste with America, said the cafe's co-owner, Luca Ferrara, in an interview with Corriere della Sera. This symbolic rebranding isn't isolated. Across Seoul, Bangkok, and even Paris, American branded drinks dishes and even fast food menu names are being swapped out for local or neutral titles. It reflects more than a cultural whim. It signals a deepening aversion to U.S. symbols, especially among Gen Z consumers. According to a 2024 Pew Global Attitude Survey, favorability ratings for the U.S. among young adults in G20 countries dropped to just 43%, down from 62% a decade earlier. As American soft power erodes, even coffee becomes a referendum on perception. And what's happening on menus may be the first sign of a larger consumer mutiny still brewing. In 2024, U.S. exports of consumer goods to Canada fell by 11.4%, while exports to the EU declined by 12.6%, according to the U.S. Census Bureau. But the disappearance isn't just in trade data. It's happening on store shelves. In Berlin, the German retailer Raui cut shelf space for Kellogg's and Kraft Heinz by 40% in favor of local brands, citing supply instability and shifting consumer trust. In Canada, grocery giant Loblaw began promoting European over U.S. cheese and condiments, stating that customer preferences have shifted toward non-American alternatives, according to a spokesperson quoted in the Globe and Mail. These shifts aren't always political. They're operational. Logistics delays, currency volatility, and regulatory uncertainty tied to Washington's foreign policy have made American suppliers riskier partners. What's emerging is a new supply chain logic. When buyers want consistency, America is no longer the first call. It's the complication. Donald Trump's tariff policies from 2018 to 2020 and their partial reinstatement in 2025 were pitched as pro-worker but triggered long-term fractures. After the reintroduction of aluminum and steel tariffs on the EU in February 2025, Germany's Minister for Economic Affairs, Robert Habeck, called them an outdated tool, damaging Western unity. In retaliation, the EU revived dormant tariffs on Harley-Davidson and Levi's. According to Bloomberg, U.S. exports to the EU in tariff-affected sectors dropped by $6.4 billion in Q1 2025 compared to the same quarter in 2024. A survey conducted by the European Roundtable for Industry found that 72% of executives across Europe reassessed U.S. supplier relationships due to policy unpredictability. The cost wasn't just monetary, it was reputational. Longtime allies began to question whether U.S. trade policy was based on economics or ideology. And when allies start acting like competitors, the damage runs deeper than duty percentages. In 2024, hashtag Boycott USA trended in over 18 countries, not driven by official sanctions, but by decentralized citizen pushback. In South Africa, labor unions urged the government to cancel defense contracts with U.S. firms after Washington criticized Pretoria's stance on Ukraine. In India, U.S. fast food chains like Burger King reported a 22% drop in foot traffic after Prime Minister Modi's nationalist allies amplified social media campaigns against foreign food dependence, according to Nielsen India. In Turkey, the Confederation of Turkish Trade Unions released a public letter in March 2025 urging consumers to stop using U.S. apps in response to drone sales too. These aren't coordinated acts of diplomacy, they're grassroots economic resistance. Yet what's alarming is how quickly they become sticky. Once alternative platforms or brands take root, the old U.S. players rarely regain lost ground. So is this a momentary backlash, or the cementing of new global loyalties? Tesla's global EV market share has plummeted from 14% in 2022 to 8.5% in early 2025, according to Bloomberg and AF. In China, the world's largest EV market, Tesla's sales dropped 26% year over year as of March 2025. The Chinese government excluded Tesla from its EV subsidy program while heavily promoting BYD and NIO, whose combined market share now exceeds 35%. But it isn't just about policy, it's about perception. State-run media regularly frame Tesla as a proxy for Western influence, and Chinese authorities launched 3 safety probes in 6 months targeting Tesla vehicles. Meanwhile, in Germany, the powerful IG Metall Union protested working conditions at Tesla's Berlin Gigafactory, amplifying headlines about American-style labor exploitation. Reuters reports that even in markets like Australia and Norway, once bullish on Tesla, customer satisfaction scores are falling, with critics citing software surveillance concerns and geopolitical backlash. Elon Musk may have made electric cars aspirational, but in a world increasingly skeptical of American brands, aspiration now has a different accent. In 2025, Mercado Libre in Brazil removed over 800 U.S. products from its top search rankings, favoring local and Chinese alternatives, according to company data reviewed by Reuters. In India, Meesho's new AI-driven algorithm deprioritized American consumer electronics in its default sort order, citing logistical instability and political pressure in internal strategy documents leaked to the kin. In South Korea, Coupang's 2024 Q4 vendor update revealed a 31% reduction in shelf space for U.S. food and cosmetic brands, replaced largely by ASEAN-sourced inventory. This is not ideological, it's algorithmic. U.S. products once default global choices are now flagged as volatile due to tariff exposure, legal restrictions, and compliance uncertainty. Shopify's March 2025 Global Trends report shows a 19% drop in international checkout conversion rates for U.S. merchants attributed to rising cross-border regulatory scrutiny. The consequence, not loud protest, but quiet invisibility. When you're buried by code, the consumer doesn't need a reason to forget you. They just never see you in the first place. Coca-Cola quietly removed Made in the USA labels from products in several African markets after sales in Nigeria and Kenya dropped 12% and 9% respectively between the first quarter of 2024 and the first quarter of 2025, according to Bloomberg Africa. McDonald's rebranded 47 franchises in the Middle East under local ownership following the Gaza conflict backlash that caused a 37% decline in regional revenue, per the Wall Street Journal. While brands are attempting rebranding strategies to soften U.S. associations, such as Nike operating in Iran through lookalike distributors, or Meta downplaying its American origins in Vietnam, these efforts haven't restored trust. According to Edelman's 2025 Trust Barometer, global trust in American brands fell to 41%, the lowest since 2002, and trust once broken isn't easily rebranded. Harvard Business School's Benjamin Edelman noted in a March Financial Times piece consumers aren't just reacting to logos. They're responding to national behavior embedded in supply chains, labor, and politics. You can rename the storefront, but if the barcode still traces back to Washington, the product might as well carry a disclaimer. Global consumer activism has evolved from protests to preference shaping, and it's measurable. In February 2025, Nielsen tracked a 16% drop in sales of American packaged goods across Southeast Asia compared to the previous year. In France, Carrefour replaced 120 SKUs from American firms with domestic or EU-sourced alternatives following customer petitions confirmed in a March 2025 earnings call. Meanwhile, a Reuters Ipsos poll found 48% of Latin American respondents said they intentionally avoided U.S. brands in the last 12 months. This isn't a boycott. It's erosion. Shoppers are responding not just to prices, but to policies' headlines and perceived overreach. In Colombia, a viral TikTok campaign in March urged followers to avoid American baby products after leaked reports of pressure from Washington on local health regulations. And it worked. Johnson & Johnson's baby care segment dropped 19% in the region, quarter over quarter. The battlefield has moved off the streets and into checkout carts. And the fight isn't declared, it's distributed algorithmic and very hard to stop. Once a symbol of excellence made in America now triggers compliance alerts in procurement offices across emerging markets. A 2025 report from the International Chamber of Commerce found that 62% of surveyed importers across Africa and Southeast Asia flagged U.S. goods as higher risk due to export bans, IP restrictions, and tariff unpredictability. Egypt's Ministry of Health recently delayed over $15 million worth of U.S. medical device imports due to licensing ambiguities linked to U.S. dual-use technology regulations, as reported by Al Ahram Weekly. In Vietnam, textile exporters are scaling back on American industrial machinery purchases after U.S. Customs Enforcement froze $22 million in shipments over a trade origin dispute. Japan's Ministry of Economy noted in a March 2025 policy brief that sourcing from the U.S. now requires contingency plans equivalent to dealing with sanction-prone nations. Even allies are hedging. "We see value in American quality," said a senior official in the UAE's Ministry of Economy to The National, "but the political cost is rising faster than the product value." The label hasn't changed, but the meaning has. In global boardrooms, it increasingly reads as "handle with care." So what happens when consumer rejection turns into financial rejection? When the same governments, retailers, and consumers quietly phasing out U.S. products start phasing out the U.S. dollar. Because if a brand collapse can begin with jeans and ketchup, a currency collapse can begin with bond auctions and swift alternatives. Already, China and Saudi Arabia are settling oil in yuan. BRICS nations are piloting their own payment system. And just last month, Brazil's central bank halved its U.S. dollar reserve holdings, the lowest since 2008, according to the IMF. So, if the world stops buying American, does that mean it stops buying America? That's not just trade friction. That's tectonic. We're glad you're enjoying this video. Please like and subscribe. Check out another video that is now on your screen. Goodbye, and see you in the next programs.